One of the questions that I get asked a lot is, what size mountain bike am I? And yeah, it's a tricky question because not all vintage mountain bikes are the same. Lucky enough, I've owned a lot of them in my past, so I can show you the differences and considerations. First up is standover height. So if you can't stand over the bike, it might be a bit uncomfortable and there'll be issues if you fall. Measure from the crotch to the ground with your feet about shoulder width apart, and then you can use this measurement as a gauge. For bikes with a horizontal top tube, you just measure from the ground to the top of the tube, and then if it has a sloping top tube, just measure where you would stand above it. What you want is a few centimeters of clearance just so you're comfortable, and you can see that as the mountain bikes get newer, they made the top tube height shorter in case you're on rough terrain and you need to put your foot down. Bikes used to be sized from their seat tube, and as time went on, the geometries changed, so the seat tube got smaller and smaller, but the bike size stayed relatively the same. So what we're going to do is ignore the seat tube and focus on the top tube, because that's going to affect your reach. As long as you can stand over the bike, it's not going to be an issue. To size the top tube, first we need to know how to measure it. We're going to measure it center to center, which is C to C. And what that means is from the center of the head tube to the center of the seat tube. If you're looking at a bike online or on Marketplace, I would get the person to measure it this way, as this is the most accurate way. So next thing is figuring out what size or sizes will fit you. Obviously, trying on the bike is the best thing to do, because you can kind of gauge how much room you have for your knees and what you feel comfortable on. And for the people that can't, this is what this guide is for, I guess. I'm going to show you the sizes that I ride and what I'm comfortable with, and then what you can do is either size up or down depending on what you see fit. You can probably see that when I'm trying on the different sizes, I have different handlebar setups, and yes, that does affect the size. We'll talk about that soon, but what we want to do here is to just narrow down the frame size first, basically find a happy medium, and then we can look at stem and handlebar sizes and how that affects it after. Okay, so you can see that my sizes range pretty large from 58 to 54. What's probably the best fit for me, if I was looking for a bike, I'd probably look for a 55 or 56. So now you basically have the basics of what you need to find a bike. So you can either stop watching here, or if you want to nerd it up, keep watching. One of the things that is often overlooked when picking out a bike size is the handlebars and stem. And these two things have a major effect on the position of your body on the bike. This is a stem. It basically connects the handlebars to your steerer tube. When you measure the length, it's from the center of the clamp to the center of the steerer. And then when the rise is from center of the stem tube to the center of the handlebar tube. Most stems also go by the angle, but yeah, we'll just make an educated guess because I doubt people are busting out the protractor. So the longer the stem, the longer your bike's going to feel, and then the higher the angle, the more upright you'll be. Same idea with the bars. The wider they are, the more you got to reach out, so you increase this reach, and the opposite for narrow bars. In your hand position in relationship to the head tube, so is it behind the head tube or in front of the head tube, that will affect your reach as well. And then also the rise of the bars. Higher up means more comfy, down low means more stretched out. And the next thing is saddle and seat post. So seat post comes mainly in two options: zero offset and offset. And also your saddle position, you can slide it forward or backwards. Pretty self-explanatory here. The more you move it back, the longer your reach will be, and the more you move it forward, the shorter your reach will be. You might have noticed that all my bikes are not the same size, so what I'm going to do is go through each one and show you the different things I use to make them fit, and then hopefully you can get a little bit of an insight on what to do with yours if you need to do the same. Alright, so first up is the 1989 Wicked Fat Chance. So the geometry here is more of an 80s geo where it's got the straight top tube, longer top tube usually you find, and it has a short seat tube, so standover height usually really isn't an issue with these types of bikes. This bike originally, when I got it, it was a little bit long for me, so you can see it has a 57 almost 58 top tube, so quite long than what I usually ride for. But I decided to build up more of a cruiser upright bike for this one. So getting the Sake MTS 100 stem gives me a bit of rise, and then these walled bars have a lot of back sweep on them. So you can see the position of the bars are actually all the way back behind the head tube. And that way that allows me to ride this bike comfortably with a pretty upright position. And it also has a 0 offset seat posts, and I put a turbo saddle on there with it pushing forward a little bit, and it ends up being quite comfortable for me for this bike. If anything, I think I could move the stem up, the quill stem, a little bit higher to give me a little bit more rise. But yeah, overall pretty good. Alright, next up is the 93 wheeler. So 4 years have gone past, and you can see they put shocks up front. The head tube is higher and the seat tube is lower, no more horizontal top tube. So when I first got this bike, it had probably like a 120mm stem, kind of your old school stem. And this bike would probably be a LXL, so quite large, but knowing that I'm going to mod it up, it ended up fitting me quite well at a 56 top tube. You can see I put a short stem on and high rise bars. So what it did was it put my position way further up, and I feel quite comfortable on this. You can see I still got room for my knees. It handles pretty well as well. Pretty direct steering from 0 offset. And then for the saddle, I was able to put the saddle in more of a center or neutral position, which means more comfort for my knees. A small note with the low treble forks is it does make the head tube a bit higher, so it raises your entire cockpit up a little bit. So yeah, just take that into account if you're running some suspension forks. But yeah, no complaints on this one. Feels really good, rolls really well, handles good too. Alright, this is the 94 GT, so 1 year later from the other bike, but I've modded it so much that it probably doesn't matter. You can see I put the shocks up front. Originally I had rigid forks on there, and it made the cockpit like way too low. So I used the shocks to make the cockpit a bit higher. I used the stem to make it higher, and also the velvet orange bars to make it even higher again. So it really put my position up and made it more of type of a cruisy type of bike. You can see there's also not too much offset with my hand position, pretty much over the stem or over the steerer. And then because this is a 56.5 top tube, I was able to move the saddle back a bit more. I actually have the saddle pretty much slammed backwards with a 20mm offset on the seat posts, and that made this bike super comfy ride. I have my shocks on pretty soft as well, and with the big Merit tires, it was such a fun cruisy ride. But yeah, overall pretty good with this one. Happy with the fit. It does have a very different riding characteristics as the previous bike, but yeah, it's good like that. Alright, this is the 97 Giant, so you can see 3 years later, and the geo has changed a lot, so you get way more standover height. The seat tube is way smaller, and also this is also a smaller bike for me. It's at 54, but what happens is when you get a smaller frame, it feels kind of more nimble, it feels a little bit more twitchy. I made this kind of like old school style with the long stem, and you can see I'm kind of in like a more aggressive riding position. So if actually a good call is if you're thinking about converting a vintage mountain bike into a kind of like a drop bar gravel bike, what I do is get a slightly smaller frame, because if you have drop bars, it's going to put your hands more in front with the hood position. So this would be a good candidate for me to make a drop bar if I so wish. But you can see I have the saddle completely slammed forward. I would like a 0 setback seat post for this. I think that would fit me a bit better with the long stem. But yeah, overall this bike is pretty light and really fast to ride. And the final bike, we got 98 Specialized Rockhopper Sport. Yeah, this feels super good. It's almost the same size as the previous bike, 54 top tube and super short seat tube. But you can kind of see what I did to make it fit me I would say this bike is probably more of one of my playful bikes. I extended the stem to make the reach a little bit further. Usually when I put the MX bars on, I just run a 50 mil BMX stem or something like that. But I feel like this bike, having the little longer stem, makes it feel a little bit faster, and also allowed it to give me more room for my knees as well. But yeah, this bike is super fun. If I have an errand or something, I take it out, and you can really just whip around on it. You can get off on and off pretty easy. And then I don't think I mentioned this in the last bike, but it also has a lower BB drop, which makes you feel a little bit faster, makes you feel a little bit closer to the ground, which is kind of cool as well. I think they used to use this same frame with low travel shocks as well. So this was kind of like in the era right between. So sometimes you're either stuck with a smaller frame or bigger frame, or you're about to buy a frame and you can't get the exact size you want. So which one should you do? Well, I'm going to explain the different characteristics between the two, and hopefully that helps. A bigger bike is going to feel a little bit more stable because of the long wheelbase, going to feel cruisier, almost kind of like steering a boat. So yeah, it's good for kind of like being a chiller bike. But yeah, if you have a bigger bike, depending on how big it is, it's going to be heavier and it's going to be less wieldy, so harder to move around, get on and off. But once you're on it, it feels really good, especially for long rides. And I'd say it's probably a good candidate if you put sweat bars on it, just because it's going to bring the reach back a little bit as well. And then for a smaller bike, a smaller frame, it's going to feel way more nimble. You can kind of like play around with it, chuck it around, and it'll be light as well. You can get on and off. It's going to be more twitchy, so you might feel a little bit uncomfortable riding it for a really long time. But if you're going off-road with tons of rocks, tons of terrain and stuff like that, it's going to feel way better than a bigger frame, because you'll be able to put your foot down and move the bike around a bit easier. And if you're thinking of putting drop bars on a bike, a smaller frame is definitely the way to go, because your reach is going to be way longer with drop bars. Because everyone's body shape is a little bit different. You know, some people might have longer legs, some people might have shorter arms. You really have to experiment to get the right fit that you want, and it's a process that can take a little bit of time. So yeah, try your friends' bikes, try different shop bikes. Basically, the more bikes you try, the more of a better idea you're going to get to be able to figure out what you want. Also, another thing to consider is that your body can change over time as well. So especially with like drop bar bikes or flat bar bikes with a long stem, your body does stretch a little bit and you become a little bit more flexible the more you ride it. So sometimes when you just hop on a bike for 2 minutes, it doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't fit. You kind of have to have a little of a break-in period. And then also the terrain you ride might change over time. You might, kind of start off on, strictly riding road, but then you change and you want to ride off-road. And 2 different frames for the 2 different types of terrain is really going to affect how it feels on the bike as well. Hopefully this video helped and you can get a good idea of the kind of at least the ballpark of what you can ride. And most important thing at the end of the day is just hopping on a bike and just riding it. So even if it's too big or too small, if you're enjoying it, then no issues. If you have any tips or setups that you want to share, let me know down below. I'm sure I probably missed something. But yeah, as always, hope you liked the video, hope it was helpful. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace!